Eric, how are you?
I'm great. I'm great. How are you?
Oh, well, excellent. And so I heard you had a previous conversation that I was not part of. So next time I'll be an early bird.
But
But
just
so we have,
we were just rehashing the last time when I was there for Passover. My daughter's actually flies back this weekend.
oh,
Yeah,
amazing.
she's going to come back, and so yeah, no, Talia and I were just catching up because she was off in Thailand. Uh,
Yes.
I
So
saw the pictures on Facebook.
So given the fact that the busy season is over, I assume or hope that many of our viewers have been there or are going to. Thailand, highly recommended. It's a simple vacation, just add water. So I see it's A8 here. So for us, it's a kickoff time. I want to welcome everybody listening and thank you for joining us. There's probably going to be a lot more people joining as we continue. And first of all, I'm Omri. I'm the co-founder of Anchor. A little bit about Anchor, like in a note, Anchor is a revenue automation platform. We're automating onboarding, proposals, invoicing, and syncing everything with getting paid automatically. So our concept is adding to your bottom line with automation, which makes me really excited about the topic that we're going to cover today with Eric, which is how are we able to develop an additional stream of revenue for the accounting practice. And I want to introduce Eric for anyone, probably potentially there's a few people who don't know him yet, but above all, he's one of my favorite people in this space. He's a brilliant person, but more than anything, he knows his stuff. He's a best-selling author of multiple books, one of the best or among the best attorneys that are dealing with tax representation, and without a doubt, the leading educator for accountants in how to do tax representations. So help me everybody with welcoming Eric Green, and I hope we'll have a session packed with value for you guys.
Yeah, no, we definitely have to talk about it. And actually, and how I found you. I mean, and especially with what's coming. So no, I'm very excited for this. I wish we were there in person. We really should have timed this to do this when I was there in person. So if you go out to my Facebook and LinkedIn page, you'll see the photos that Omri and I did when I was actually there at the Anchor offices, which are beautiful. You can't really see, you can see a little bit out the window. It's nighttime there, but it is wonderful space and it's a great crew of people.
So thank you. So I want to kick it off with asking you to tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into the tax representation space.
By a fluke. So what's for those people who actually, if we have some tax rep members on who actually have my book about building $1 million practice, I go through this story, but basically I went out to be an estate planner. And I was doing estate planning. I had a friend of mine who had a CPA practice, so he's referring clients. I'm doing some S corps, basic business stuff. And we started having clients that got into trouble. And back then, Omri, I'm gonna date myself if the gray hair doesn't already. There was something at the IRS called Human Beings, and you could go speak to them. And they actually taught me to do this. And so, I went over there and I'm going to negotiate for my client. And they were like, "What are you doing? You have to get into compliance." What's that, right? And they basically taught you how to do this. You did it. You learn by doing.
What year was this?
And by the way, you'd think that once you help someone with their tax problems, they wouldn't tell anyone, they'd keep it private. Nope. They went and told their friends. I got referrals. And what happened over time, without really intending to, it just became more and more a part of my practice. And more, I was doing estate planning less and less and keeping up with it, till eventually I kind of concluded, you know what, I'm better off giving the estate planning to somebody else and let me just focus my practice here. Very few people do it. It's a premium practice. You know, people are like, well, these people are broke, they can't pay you. Oh, no, 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 they're desperate for help. They will pay you. They'll borrow it from mom and dad, they'll whatever. And it just sort of took off. And I had a friend of mine, Jeff Sklarz, who was at a different firm, and he does mostly litigation and bankruptcy. We met doing our master's in tax together because more and more he was running into tax problems as part of the bankruptcy. And we used to laugh that, you know, everybody, all the former IRS people in Connecticut where we are, we're all old back then. They were all old. And so we used to laugh that eventually we'd be each other's only competition. We became very good friends. We eventually left, started our own firm. And it's funny, now we'll get calls, somebody will call and be like, you know, Eric, this sounds good. But I have somebody else, another name. I'm going to talk to him. What do you know about Jeff Sklarz? I'm like, he's in the office next to me. You want me to go get him? And he's like, oh, really? You're at the same firm? Didn't you notice the name Green and Sklarz? They're like, oh, well, then I'm in the right place. So I never intended to get into this area. I fell into it, and I enjoy it. It's exciting. It's interesting. And when you help people, the problem with doing planning, they don't really appreciate it. It's sort of like, oh, well, yeah, great, it worked out. With this, when you take the weight off, you temporarily change their lives.
This is like, so, for me, it's, I have a lot of questions, but I'll try to tame myself. So I'll ask the questions that are relevant for everybody. But first of all, like, when did you start? How many years have you been doing this?
Well, I was an accountant before, and I was doing sales tax defense before. So if you include that, it's actually, I hate to say this, it's closing in on 30 years. I've been an attorney for 24, and it was really the second, third year when this started. So I tell people I've been doing this for 23 years.
Incredible. So we're in good company to learn from. So like you talk about this really vividly, and what was the impact on your business? Because I assume a lot of it has changed. So both in a personal level, in a business level, revenue level, if you can share, what was the impact of starting that adventure, so to say?
What's interesting is my income went up, and I thought about this actually when I was writing my book. I was thinking about, what was it? What I think is, when you're doing estate planning, especially when you're starting out, there's a lot of competition, and older attorneys have been there forever. When this started, with this being representation, IRS representation, there weren't that many people doing it, and so there was less competition. In fact, what was eye-opening to me is I was the same $200 an hour that I was as an estate planner at the time. And I ran into somebody from New York who had said, Eric, would you come in and help me with this case? And he said, I'm going to quote the client, what's your hourly rate? And I said, 200. And there's this pause on the phone. He said, 200. He said, my paralegal is 225. He said, no, you said you're 375 starting today. And that's what he quoted. And he was 500, but it's New York. And I put it on a letter, and it accidentally, I changed like my representation letter, my retainer agreement, and I didn't catch it. So it started going out to other people at 375, and they just signed. Like nobody batted an eye. And so of course now I'm like, I should have been 375 a year ago. But so from the perspective of billing, I have less competition. They need you. It's a premium service. You charge a premium price. What it's done is, in many ways, it's evened out. I'm going to say this and I'll explain. It kind of evened out my life. What I mean by that is, when I was doing estate planning, it was sort of very up and down, but you knew in December, you were nuts. It was like our tax season, 80, 90 hours a week, weekends, because clients want to hurry up, sign before year end. They're going on a trip, they're going here. The IRS stuff, we do get emergencies, but they tend to be rare. I found that I basically am busier, but consistently year round. I don't tend to have many fluctuations. It gets a little quieter actually before the new year, because the IRS, if you don't know this, the IRS, they have to use their vacation or they lose it. They don't get to carry it over. So they all take vacation the last 2 weeks of the year. So the IRS basically goes down to like a skeleton crew. So no one's calling, no one's harassing anyone. So it gets a little quiet at a good time of year, but it's also been more rewarding. Again, the planning, the only reward was when it was done and I had the fee. Here, it's resolved, and we get gift baskets, Harry and David stuff sent to us from people who are really thankful. And it's that sort of, I refer to it as a superpower, but to be able to have someone come in who feels they can't get out from under this, that the IRS, because the IRS doesn't really explain what to do, they're just hammering away. To be able to stop that and have them breathe again and stop the fighting with their spouse and all of that is really rewarding, much more rewarding than I ever got doing the estate planning.
Sounds incredible. And, and I can definitely relate to a lot of this, because part of what I've done in the past was a lot of advertising stuff that before I went deep into software, and in advertising, you are more than anything, you're just disturbing people. Like, this is at the essence of it. And here, when you're building a product, and especially when you're touching people's, I call it the oxygen of the business. So, we're all out to make an impact, but without that cash flow, without that, what you call, like, I think the proper mindset and quiet, and not the burnout and the craziness, you can't really deliver an impact. So for me, having the gift of influencing, that, we see it as it's a big part of my fuel, creating and doing what we do. So it's really, what you're saying is really resonating with me.
And what I found was, and for those people listening, when you start doing this, it's really about reputation. So I found that my income, the revenue, and I want to get to this because it's actually how I found you. It tends to like rise and then level, rise and level. And you start to get busier and busier as more people know that you do this. Today I can market in ways I couldn't 20 years ago. Digitally, and I mean, people had websites, but honestly, a lot of people just didn't bother. It was still sort of the Wild West at that point. I ended up getting to the point where I will get a phone call, with somebody and say, yes, we can help you. Here's what it is. And we would quote them. We mail them out the letter or email. I don't know about you. The next day I'm on to the next, an hour later, I'm on to the next thing. I forget. And so at the end of every year, we have a folder with all of these letters that never came back. These clients that never called back, we never followed up. And by then it's really kind of too late, like it's 9 months on, whatever it is. And I was actually talking to Gaynor about this. In fact, it's Gaynor who introduced us. And she said, well, why don't you check out Anchor? And I'm like, what's Anchor? And what I love, and maybe we'll talk about a little bit later, is the automation aspect where, and the reason I bring this up, we had someone today sign a letter. We sent it out like 3 weeks ago. I forgot about it, but I got an alert that they opened and read it, and that they've signed the agreement. And so that's, it's what you're doing, I think, is unbelievable for a business that used to try to have staff handle this, right? Follow up on this, call the client, whatever. The system just does it automatically. And I think that hopefully it's going to, I bring peace to people. In some way, you'll bring peace to the business because that aspect will just be under control. But I digress.
I'll bring this to focus. I'll just say that my favorite part of the day is going through, emails of people that we've helped, and you discover that, you just free them up. I think more than anything, the burden in their head, having to always remember things like billing and chasing clients. But I'm putting this aside, and I want to focus on what I feel is most interesting part for our people listening, which is, like, let's say for an accounting firm today that is not part of the tax representation activity, and they're looking or investigating into exploring this as an additional stream of revenue. First of all, like, from your experience, you've been doing this for a while. You have a community of over 500 people that are doing this monthly, but what is the impact or the potential impact on revenue that you feel that they can expect, or what is the range? How do you see it? Because at essence, I think this is the topic of this conversation, and I'd like to address it.
To me, it's a very obvious addition, because if you're already a tax practitioner, whether you're doing planning or whether you're doing returns, this isn't that complicated. I wish I could sit here and tell you that, well, I'm a brain surgeon and this is a very particular, and you need to be. It isn't. It's actually fairly straightforward. Very linear in nature in terms of how the IRS works. And mostly, I think the issue is, at least my accounting program, my law program, and my LLM in tax, nobody covers representation. There's one class on tax litigation in LLM programs, and even that is optional. So you can be a tax attorney, you could be an accountant, CPA, go to law school and get an LLM in tax and never cover this topic. And so there's a lot of mystery around it, or gee, I don't want to fight with the IRS. But if you have a tax practice now, there's really nothing else you need to buy. There is some there's transcript software you probably want to get, but it's not expense. There's not a big expense, like a hurdle to get into it. You've already got clients. We know the need for this. I mean, it's over 25 million taxpayers that are in trouble. You've got the skills, from tax returns to working through the formula. It's really just having the mindset of, we can help you. Come in, we can help you. And we've got this. And I think to me, it's a very obvious add-on. It's something they can charge a premium for, because it's not bookkeeping, it's not tax return preparation. And so I'm always a little surprised more firms aren't doing this.
You're talking, and I'm thinking in my head, I hear Ron Baker speaking, and he's talking a lot about, the plussing, like, how do you add that edge into the practice? How do you add something? So, I think for a lot of people, if they even just have a monthly clause of, insurance against the IRS, I think, like, this is something a lot of clients will probably, adopt quickly. And about the, not being able to learn this anywhere, I wonder if the IRS has something to do with the curriculum, making sure that no one's touching it.
No, I mean, transcript monitoring, using software for reasonable comp reviews. There's so many things that you can do that would be literally passive income, aside from the representation, but just sort of tangential to it. So for instance, one of the things, after we resolve an issue, I used to just revoke my power of attorney. Well, clients don't like that, because when you do that, they get a letter from the IRS saying, Eric Green's no longer representing you. And they're like, whoa, why are you firing me? We're not firing you, but we're done. No, please. Okay, we'll file a power of attorney. We'll keep it on file. We can use our transcript software to monitor your account. And they're like, great, how much? And I was sort of embarrassed. I'm like, I don't know, $500. And they're like, great, and they pay it. We have some members that are charging $99 a month. And you know, when you start helping lots of people, you can do the math. You have a pretty nice annuity going. And by the way, if something does pop up, now they have to hire you again, right? In fact, that's how you make sure they hire you again, because you're the first person to tell them, hey, you've been flagged for an audit. Hey, you've been flagged, you're back in collections. You know, so it's really, if you can get your arms around your practice, it's a terrific way to add a revenue stream. And again, I find it fascinating. I find the work interesting. Every case is a little bit different. Again, I'm a little surprised more accountants. I know why lawyers don't get into it, because they hear tax and they all run for the hills. But accountants, I would think, would be all over this.
So potentially they hear legal stuff and run for the hills. But I think like this is part of your mission and journey, and to introduce this to as many people in our space as possible. But the book is How to Build a $1 Million Representation Practice. So you're alluding the fact that, you know, this could be $1 million practice. So in your experience, how, let's say this, how challenging is it? Because nothing is super easy. Everything takes effort to create, but is there, you know, a 0 and 1, or this is something that gradually you can introduce to the business before, you know, and start generating revenue? Or it's like, okay, learning curve, and then I can actually do something?
You could do either or. It's one of those things that you could let your clients know, and then maybe you're not really doing any marketing. What I have found to build them to get to the $1 million practice, it's not complicated. What it really takes is discipline. You know, and in fact, I've been a little harsh with some of our members who will message me and say, you know, I did blogging for a month and I only got like 1 phone call. I'm like, keep doing it. Well, yeah, but I only got, you're quitting, basically. Keep doing it. And you know, I didn't go to $1 million in a year. I didn't go to $1 million in 5 years. Right? Within 2 years, I was making more money than I was when I left the big accounting firm, KPMG. But you know, it takes time. And by the way, you can go faster than I did. I didn't know anything about marketing. There was no blogging. I mean, you know, a lot of the stuff that we can do now to be in front of our audience didn't exist when I was doing this, when I was starting to build this. It's really about the way I describe it, and I think I described it in the book this way too, but if anyone here is a tax rep member, they've probably heard me say this. It's like getting into shape, you know, going to the gym. You don't go to the gym for 1 day for 8 hours and get in amazing shape. In fact, you'll probably just send yourself to the hospital. What you do, you'll get in amazing shape going 30 minutes, day after day after day. It's really the consistent effort of just putting the message out, making sure people know. And that can be hard. I mean, you've started and sold companies, so you know this too.
We're talking about the marketing aspect of it, and I think that is something that folks, you know, understand already. It's like getting a new client, so whether it's for tax representation or this, it's a separate thing. I'm talking about actual knowledge about, okay, like, do I need to really spend like 23 years understanding this, or this is, you know, I can put in a few good months and then done. I'm actually, it's enough for me to start practicing.
You do not have to spend 23 years, and there was no tax rep network when I started, so you learned on the job, and that just took time. Today, at least inside tax rep, we have, I think, 170 hours of on-demand training, and again, you can go as fast and slow as you want, but it's there. What I think the real benefit is to Plug Tax Rep, which is really not what this is about, but is we're your help desk. So where 23 years ago, I would go back, pull out books, figure it out, log on to Lexis and do research. I mean, you can do all of that, or you can go to the help desk and we can say, do this, do this, do this. And the training is there. Our forms and letters are there. You don't have to write them from scratch. So I think today you can get up to speed much faster because the knowledge is more concentrated in one place that you have access to, where it really wasn't before. Not to my knowledge, at least. And so I think that for anyone listening to this, they can get up to speed on this fairly quickly. And like I've told members, if they get a phone call and they don't know what they're doing, you can tell the client, look, this is what I'm thinking. Let me do a little research, get back to you. When the client walks out the door, they can literally log in and we will walk them through what to do. So they shouldn't be letting things go because they don't feel comfortable with it. We can get them up to speed. I think that you can pretty much get some expertise in this within 30 days.
Wow.
And possibly faster if you take a week of vacation and you spend 8 hours a day going through the training. Let's put it this way. You go through the basic training, you already know more than 95% of the accountants that are trying to do this. So you're already probably in the top 5% just by going through our basic training. And then as you start diving into it, having us kind of help you, look at what we've drafted on certain issues. You can get your practice to an expert level much faster than when Eric and Jeff were kind of, lugging it out 20 something years ago, figuring it out.
So that's, I think, good news for everybody, because I think you really caught me by surprise. I was not expecting anything even near 30 days, because this is, it's a massive thing to be able to add another stream of revenue. And if they can actually, I assume it takes longer to be a master at anything, but just to get a grasp on it in 30 days is amazing. So maybe this leads me to, another question, and then I'll take some questions from the audience that I see are building up. If we'll try, people like things in threes. So if you'd like to say, what are the 3 steps needed to easily, to lower the barrier to get started? So me listening to you would be, first of all, join the training network and start educating yourself. Second is maybe, make sure that you're disciplined enough to complete it and not be, the 90% that buy the course or buy the book and then leave it on the shelf. And the third is, and I know we spoke about it, and this was a big part of our foundation, is systems, having, setting up the ground, for success. So this is a big part why, we started teaming out, and the use that you're making with Anchor about basically having all the templates and everything systemized and easy to do. So maybe you can expand on that, what systems needs to be in place? How do you see the foundation to succeeding? What's needed?
You just have to be willing to do the work. I mean, there are lots of systems today that can do a lot of the way I started practicing, you don't have to do anymore. There's transcript software. There's Anchor that will get your agreements signed and follow up automated. There's so much you can do. eFax, scanning, that, we used to make copies and ship packages to the IRS. Now you can upload them. The tech. So one is embracing the technology and putting that in place will help you. The fact that you can get in and start immediately going through training on a particular topic that you want, again, versus kind of figuring it out. I think the biggest thing really is understanding that I'm willing to invest in this, my time. I'm willing to invest and spend the time to do this. The one thing I can't do is just give you a practice. It's not possible. But we can pretty much give you everything you need. You just have to do it. And so I really think that, especially these days, and Omri, I know you deal with a lot of accountants. All we keep hearing is worst tax season ever, right? This past tax season to many people it seems like you hope it doesn't get worse, and every year it seems to get worse. I think that given the skills that people have, wouldn't you rather do something that more interesting and make more money? Now, by the way, that doesn't mean you have to get rid of your tax prep practice, but your willingness to deal with the nonsense around it is going to decrease, especially when you don't need it anymore. And so what I find is many of our members will start limiting that to their best clients. So I'm going to keep my top 20 clients. I enjoy working with them. They're paying me appropriately, and everybody else can go because I don't need that anymore. I don't need to work till 11 o'clock for 2 months in a row anymore, right? I can do what I want to do, use the skills I have in a different way, make more money, and go home for dinner with the family.
So first of all, I completely agree, and this is something that we're hearing, and we're a very integrated part with this community. And apart from massive burnout and never-ending regulation that keeps changing, another big thing is employees, and the fact that there's labor shortage and and talent shortage and different variations of it. So just touching on this, and then I owe so many questions. I see that they're piling up, and then we'll address that. But how many people do they need to add to the practice? Is this something that they can do on their own as an owner? What's the scope for this?
I did this on my own, starting out. I did not have an assistant. I didn't have anybody's staff. Now, here's what's interesting about this. If you want to build your tax prep practice out, if you're an attorney and want to do more estate planning, you need to hire professionals and train them, right? You need preparers who at least know the basics of what they're doing. As an attorney, even your paralegals have to have experience drafting, and because otherwise you're doing everything yourself anyway. With IRS representation, what's fascinating, so I have staff, many of my members interact with my staff, Amanda, Nicole, Beth, none of them have an accounting degree, none of them worked in tax. Nicole doesn't have a college degree. They happen to just be detail oriented. So they can take information from the client and put it into the software, right? No tax knowledge necessary. It's very leverageable. So I have $1 million practice, and the reason it's so profitable is I'm not hiring CPAs and attorneys. I don't need them, right? Now, as it turns out, Amanda, who got her EA, got so good at this, she actually she does her own hearings with the IRS. She has cases I never touch, which is a bonus. But the truth is, this is a practice that's very leverageable. And because of that, they can work from anywhere. Amanda works from home. Nicole, several days a week, works from home. I worked while I was there with you, all right, across the ocean. There's, other than the time change, it's leverageable. It can be worked from anywhere. Most of what you need is free from the IRS tables, the forms. Yeah, there's some software you might want. Anchor's free. I mean, there's a $5 charge with the payment, but I mean, it's free. We put up and I don't know if we're going to talk about this, but we developed those templates that are available in Anchor for representation. I can pull up my template, send it to a client, and the software goes and gets me paid. It's such a different practice now, but it's one of the things I love about this is it is leverageable. I don't feel that I have stress because of a big payroll. I don't have to be demanding hours from people. I mean, listen, we got to get work done, but it's a practice area that 23 years on, I am not sick of. I enjoy the game. It's the strategy to it. It's interesting. You're helping people. We're charging the way we like to charge, and I have good folks, and I don't have to worry about the expensive staff that I'm hiring because I don't need to. It's just not so. I think first of all, if you have a tax prep practice and you have preparers, they can certainly do this. If they can do a tax return, they can do this. But you don't need that level of training. If you can get someone, and they don't have to be young, just get anyone who's detail oriented. And as long as they're detail oriented, they can take the numbers, the software, And I mean, I know people say, well, you can do that in their tax return too, but anyone here who really knows how a tax return is done, that's no. You need to really have an understanding of what you're doing. And in a way today, they're at a disadvantage. Because when I was an accountant 27 years ago, you did it by hand. There was software, but you had to understand how the schedules and everything. It was a better way to learn. And I don't know if there are people here that about my age that remember this. Today with the software, you're putting in numbers and it's populating. I don't know that there are a lot of accountants, I don't know that truly understand the flow of everything, and that is a disadvantage. With resolution, we don't have that problem. It really is just put the right number in the right box. Where it gets interesting is on the strategy side. You know, when we're starting to teach our tax rep members, all right, you've done the form. Now let's look at it like the IRS. Do you see, first of all, see how they're going to come out. And now do you see opportunities to legitimately tweak the formula, to change the formula, and where those opportunities are? And that, to me, that's what's exciting. It's the strategy. It's all of it. But yeah, no, to bring this back, you don't need to be hiring high-end staff to do this work. You just need people that are dependable and detail-oriented.
So, sounds fascinating and appealing, and this is a good segue to David's question. He's asking, Eric, as there are more people, practitioners, moving into this area, like the tax representation, do you still see a lucrative area opportunity that for people that are not currently doing this? And how do you see it evolving into the future in terms of, you know, this becoming a commodity?
So the answer is yes. I think the opportunity is still there, and there aren't nearly enough people doing this. And I'll give you some numbers to back that up. Is it David? So when I created the first certificate program in this for CCH, which is about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, there were 870 lawyers in America that listed tax controversy or IRS representation as a practice area in Martindale-Hubbell. Today, it's 137. Why? The people that did this were all former government, Department of Justice or IRS. They left the government and they went into practice and did this. No one leaves the government anymore because of the bust and boom cycles of I mean, it used to be you went to a law firm, you didn't get laid, unless you did something stupid, you didn't get laid off. Accounting firms didn't lay people off, didn't get rid of partners. Now it happens all the time. So no one leaves the government. So it's not really lawyers that are doing this. The other thing is, as the government gets better and better at identifying non-filers with data and artificial intelligence, the collection division inventory does nothing but go up year after year after year after year. We're up to over 15 million that owe balances to the government and 10 million non-filers that they've identified. They think there may be as many as another 8 million they haven't identified yet. That is roughly 1 out of every 10 taxpayers in the country owes money to the government or hasn't filed returns. The need is huge. And once the government really ramps up this year, I think you're going to start to see this tidal wave. We're already busy, you know, and we don't have space. So, I mean, I would have to get remote people when we get that busy. I think the demand is there, and it's just going to keep growing. And it's not lawyers that are going to fill this. It's going to, honestly, I think it's going to be the CPAs and EAs that are going to be stepping up to fill the void.
Thank you for that. And I hope, David, this answers the question. We have another question that is around what does it take to actually add this to the business? Or let's say if we're doing this, how do we increase that? So maybe if I'm trying to understand the question correctly, do I need to pivot my business entirely doing this, or this could be something that is an add-on to the business? And, you know, how do you approach it? What do you recommend normally?
Having been self-employed as a solo, let's just talk practical reality. You're going to add it. I would never, unless you're independently wealthy, I would never suggest you just drop what you've got and start doing this. It does take some time to get known for doing this and whatnot. What you're going to do, what I would recommend, is you add it onto your practice. So when and I mentioned this in the book, I'll give a talk and people get very motivated, right? They're all excited. And I'm going to go and I'm going to do this. Well, that sounds great. I'm joining tax rep. Well, that sounds even better. I'm going to spend $25,000 on radio ads. Whoa, time out. No. Back up. We don't spend money, okay, out of the gate. Let's keep our money in the bank. First thing we're going to do is the easy stuff. So we're going to add this to our practice. And the first thing I'm going to do is let all my clients and my referral network know I do this. No one can send you this work if they don't know you do it, right? And my very first tax rep member is Anthony DeLucia. He's a CPA. He's retired. He basically sent a letter to his 500 clients, tax clients, saying, if you know someone who has a tax problem, we can help, offering compromise, whatever it is. In fact, it's a one-page letter. We have that letter in our members area that they can use. Literally, it's what to do if you can't pay the taxes. He got 145,000 of work his first year because here's what he got. I didn't know you do this. My brother hasn't filed in 3 years. I didn't know you do this. My son has a sales tax problem. Nobody knew that he would handle these issues. They figured they have to go to a lawyer. So first thing you do when you add this is just let everyone who already likes you know you do this, because they can't refer work to you if they don't know that you do this. The other thing is, given that 95% of people today start their search for anything on the internet and almost always on a smart device, I'm a big fan of blogging. Each of my blog posts is like a separate website. So what happens is, oh my God, they levied me. I don't want to tell my wife. So I'm on Google, on the couch, IRS levy, you get a gazillion hits. IRS levy, New Haven, Connecticut. You can't help but find us, okay? And so I think that there's a lot of great things you do that is either cheap or free out of the gate before you start spending on Google ads and all that stuff. And so I think that it is a very obvious thing to add. And here's, by the way, here's what will happen. You'll add it. It'll take time, right? You'll get a case here, a case there. I think I saw somebody ask, is it, do you really think you can add 100,000? And by the way, for those of you who don't know, I've said, come join us, add 100,000 to your bottom line. The average fee on a case, according to our members who we surveyed in 2020, it's just under $8,400. That's one case a month to add 100,000. So it's not a lot. What you're going to do is you're going to add. You won't be that crazy initially. What will happen is you will get busier and busier until you begin to feel like you're skiing and the skis are going, different paths. At that point, now you have a decision to make. And the first decision, let's go through our tax prep clients or our bookkeeping clients or whatever, whoever we don't want, let's just get rid of. I'm gonna basically work with the people I want to work with. We all spend too much time at work. Let's at least work with the people, the clients we want to, and get paid what we're worth. And so first thing you're going to do is shed everything that you don't need. And that we bootstrap. I'm a big fan of bootstrapping things. You don't necessarily have to go out of the gate crazy. Add it, you start building, and trust me, you don't have, you'll know when you get to the point where you have to make a decision, that's when you make the decision.
So take the low-hanging fruit. So
well, listen, I mean, the obvious thing is referrals are the best, right? I mean, people that like you are your best marketing. And think about it. If somebody tells me, if I said, look, I need someone for a real estate closing, I know a gazillion people, but let's say I know, and my friend said, oh, go use Joe. Chances are I'm going to call Joe and I'm going to hire Joe. Why? Because my friend said so. So referrals are the best in terms of marketing, and they don't cost you anything. You already have people that already like you. Just why not turn them into your marketing force?
So that makes complete sense, I think, for everybody, but there's still always, from when you're endeavoring into something new, there's, some sort of hesitation. So maybe you can share, success leaves clues, and there's, naturally patterns. You touch some, have the discipline, actually, use the teachings that someone had, decades of experience in putting in together. So it feels like you're not force feeding, but you're like breaking it down to bite-size chunks so people can really, like do it slowly. If we're talking about the success, so what patterns would you recognize with, past members or people that went into this, everybody's going in with like good energy and really a high desire, but what made the difference for people that actually succeeded and made this, a big part of the business? And I heard stories that people made so much money with this that they actually looked at, the amount of time and everything you mentioned and sort of shifted away from the original practice. So what is like the patterns for success here?
Well, I think we do have folks that have done that. Anthony DeLucia, right? Really found tremendous success early on and sold off his 1040 practice. That is not the norm. The feedback we get from members is they start to build up the rep practice. What's interesting is now it's building up the rest of their practice. They said, and here's why. They'll start getting calls, for tax return, tax planning, but they're not marketing for that. And when they talk to the potential client, they'll say, yeah, but you'll deal with the IRS. So I feel I'd rather have you do my stuff, because if there's a problem, you can handle it. So in weird ways, which is something I never would have thought of, what the accountants have found, the EAs and CPAs, is that in doing representation and adding it and putting that out there that they do this, it actually brought in clients on the other side of the house, because we're viewed as the commandos of the tax world, right? We'll go toe to toe with the government, like it's a battle. You and I both know people that have gone to war. It's not a war, but the point being is that we're willing to deal with the IRS, and that it elevates you. I mean, at least that's what my members have reported. So the normal member experience has been, it starts becoming a nice second income, but also now that they've gotten into doing that, the transcript monitoring, they roll out to all of their 1040 clients. Do you want us to monitor? And that accelerates that annuity stream, the reasonable comp analysis with RC reports, all of the other things that we tell them to do. So I want to say it's not so much that the rep has just so blown up, they got rid of everything else. The normal experience has been they keep growing, and it allows them more freedom to pick and choose what they do on the other side. We do have several dozen that I know of that have just sold off and gotten rid of their compliance practices, or retired from that, and only do this now, because they're older or whatever. But that's not the majority. The majority really has been, it's created a revenue stream. And once you have that comfort, like I said, your willingness to deal with the nonsense on the prep side from clients is going to go downhill pretty quickly. And those people, you can let them go, and you will bring more normalcy to your life.
Sounds good. I want to there's questions piling up, and I want to collect a few of them, but Scott is having a question about, there's a lot of questions about software in general, like what's the tech stack, what do you need, what kind of transcript monitoring and resolution specific software, if there's things. So these are these things that you guys are covering? This is information. So right now we're talking about part of your tech stack, which is the anchor, you basically practice in a box so that everything is inside. But apart from that, are other things, and this is, not in my knowledge as well.
So yes, I mean, we have our tech stack, and I'm very open with our members about it. I use TaxHelp software. I use RC reports for reasonable comp, S Corp, C Corps. Now, we don't do returns, but we deal with a lot of audits of S Corps and C Corps. And so I have the reasonable comp stuff. Nice job, which gets us all of our Google reviews and all of that. So we do have a tech stack, but I'm also very open with my members. Just because we use TaxHelp software doesn't mean you need to. There are other players in the market, Pitbull, Canopy, IRS Solutions. We chose what we thought was the best, and we've been using it for years. But honestly, I'm not hardcore one way or the other. I think they should take free trials, see what they like. You know, Anchor basically runs all of our agreements and getting us paid. What I love about Anchor, I mean, to be blunt, is not only is it super easy to use. I mean, I set it up in 20 minutes, but it's free. There's no barrier to I need to budget for this, and I think it's
That's
$5 a transaction. It's like $5 a transaction. Our minimum consulting fee is $750. So it's less than 1%. I mean, it's nothing. So you know, but yes, we do have a tech stack. I'm happy. I mean, we actually have a PDF. Happy to share it with anyone. You can email me. I'm happy to email it to you. But you're not necessarily beholden to
follow up with a lot of things and email everybody listening and whoever signed up. So we'll make sure that we put together as much information that's valuable without putting in too much and send it your way. So there's another question about another one like TaxHelp software, like for monitoring.
Yeah, I mean, so TaxHelp software, once you have your power of attorney on file, TaxHelp software, once a week, we can go and just pull updated transcripts. It pulls 100,000 transcripts, roughly in an hour. So we just, you know, on Monday morning, Nicole just goes in, logs in, and hits update. So it pulls it. What happens at the end is we get a dashboard, and what it will do is show every client and what's changed. You know, they're now in collection. They've been flagged for an audit. The offer was accepted. We actually know an offer has been accepted usually about 2 weeks before they get the letter, because it shows up in the transcript. So, you know, and then what we can do is reach out to the client and let them know, hey, you're now back in collection. Do you want us to help you with this? We'll get you a retainer, $5,000, get us all the updated information, and we'll get started because we're going to hear from the IRS. You know, so that's what we talk about when we talk about transcript monitoring. Is once a week, we just update. And again, the software will flag, here are the people where there's been a change. And we can then identify, we go through, sometimes it's nothing, but we go through it. And if it's something, we can reach out to that client, get retained, and get working.
Excellent. Quick question that, you know, it's a bit off topic, but maybe on topic. What is the best business advice you've ever gotten?
That's a good question. The best advice I've ever gotten is, and it wasn't advice directed to me. It was, and in fact, I think I opened with it in the book. It was a conversation that I had that I don't think he meant it as advice, but the question, when I was
Them.
death by success, I was so out of my mind between the law firm and tax rep keeps growing and the podcast. I mean, I was a little bit nuts. And Brent Robertson actually said, what do you want? What do you mean, what do I want? Right? And he said, no. What do you want? Paint what you want your day to look like, your week to look like. I had never sat down and thought about that. It was just put my head down and bowl forward, right? Because that's what we do. And once he gave me that, and by the way, that is a tough question to answer. I found it very difficult Because the first thing is, well, I want money. Well, that's, no, that's generic, that's BS. Describe what you want your practice to look like. And it was the first time that I began to realize I needed an assistant to get control of the phone. And that, so the best advice I got, and I would pass on to anyone, is especially if you went through this tax season, whatever, sit down and think about what you want to do. What do you want to do? And what do you want your practice and life to look like? I'm at a point where I can't pound away at 11 o'clock at night anymore. My brain doesn't work in middle age. It doesn't work that way. My kids are now going off to college. I'm going to want to travel and be where they are. So I want a practice that's mobile. I'm at the height of my billing. I don't want to give it up. But I wanted more normalcy. And it's, and once you know where you're going, it's easier to plan how to get there, right? You engineer backwards. I know what the goal is now. How do I get there? And, your brain is a servo mechanism, like a smart bomb. Once it locks onto that target, even if it moves, your brain will figure out how to get there. And that's what I have found. So the best advice I would give anyone is it's worth sitting quietly to think about really what you want your practice to look like. What do you want? And once you know that, you'll find, I think it's pretty easy to fill in backwards, or to at least go get advice from people about, look, I know what I want. I'm getting kind of stuck here, and get feedback. If you don't know really where you're going, then you're just banging your head against the wall.
I think you surprised me there, but the simplicity of this is sheer brilliance. And maybe if people are interested, there's a few good meditations about discovering what is it that you want, because I think it is a very difficult question, especially with all the shiny objects that are always orbiting around us. But I want to be respectful of time. So if people are dropping off at the end of the hour, I wanted to say two things. One is that a big part of what we're doing together is sharing your mission and vision. And we want to invite everybody to your page, which is under sayanchor.com/taxrep. It's in the chat, and we'll send everything by email as well. The basic thing of it is that we took Eric's wisdom and made sure that we basically try to make it as easy as possible, and already uploaded all the templates someone needs to get started with. So it's already pre-filled and making it just a few clicks. So that's one. More interesting potentially is for people who want to meet Eric one-on-one. For free as a courtesy. We love him, and we're part of Scaling New Heights. We have Anchor Lounge. It's a booth that we took, and we're inviting everybody to submit a request and meet with Eric one-on-one. And part of it is getting the book. So he's going to have his books there and sign it. And we're giving it away because we feel it's immense amount of value. And I think that's for me. Eric, would you like to share anything else?
No, I am looking forward to Scaling New Heights. It's a great conference every year. We'll be there together. We get to meet people one-on-one. If you're thinking about doing this, I just want you to understand you can do this. It's not that complicated. It really just comes down to, do you want this? And are you willing to do the investment, in yourself? We can help you. We can provide all the content, but it's there for the taking, and the demand is huge. So if you want to do this, we can help you get there.
Can't ask for anything more. So thank you everybody for taking the time and joining us. You've been great. You've asked a ton of good questions. If I couldn't answer some of them, we'll try to follow up with an email, and definitely share all the links and for everything that we've covered. Eric, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure like always, and I'm looking forward to meeting you in person again.
Yeah, see you in a few weeks.
All right, guys, have a beautiful week.
Thank you.
Welcome. Bye.